So if you are familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series, you know that a hobbit is a creature that looks like a very short person. They have curly hair, walk on furry padded feet, and are often mistaken for children by the larger races of Tolkien's world of Middle-earth. Their home is called the Shire. They live in very quiet, rustic lives, very simple, in cottages dug from holes in the earth, which look out upon rolling hills and gardens. If you're lucky enough to be invited to tea at a hobbit's home, just inside the front door, you'll find a parlor that features a very giant hearth, because hobbits love to eat, smoke pipes, and tell stories by the fire. Tolkien's most famous hobbits are Bilbo Baggins, his nephew Frodo Baggins, Samwise Gamgee, Merry Brandybuck, and Pippin Toad. They are considered odd by their neighbors because they are friends with a tall, wise wizard named Gandalf, who entices them to leave the Shire and travel on adventures, which is considered very strange behavior by most other hobbits. Gandalf the wizard coaxes hobbits to complete special tasks because of their size and their simplicity. When Bilbo Baggins served the dwarves under a Thorin Oakenshield in The Hobbit, he found a golden ring that contained a very dark power. Many years later, he reluctantly handed the ring over to his nephew Frodo, who was destined to return it to the fires of Mount Doom, where it was forged. Frodo relied on Gandalf to provide guidance and aid for his journey, which felt much too large for a small hobbit. Because that ring of power forged to enslave all inhabitants of Middle-earth was at large and hidden from the Dark Lord Sauron, he sent out hideous creatures called orcs and Nazgul to find it for him. Because of Sauron's lust for power, the darkness of Middle-earth spread farther and farther, and all races needed to form alliances with each other to keep that darkness in check. They needed to learn to trust each other and work together for the preservation of their world, because if the Dark Lord and his minions won, their lives as they knew them would end. All of the races of Middle-earth had their own ways of keeping back the darkness and preventing it from spreading. The elves were good archers and good healers. Dwarves made tools and armor in mines underground. And hobbits were good at hiding in tight places when they weren't involved in a riddle contest. The Rohirrim were a fair-haired race of humans who tamed horses for other races to use for speed and transportation. They gave one named Shadowfax to the great wizard Gandalf. Apart from the more celebrated races of Middle-earth that I have just mentioned, there was one creature who became totally corrupted by the ring. He was called Gollum. Originally, his name was Szklany-Gault, but he changed both inside and outside because he wore the ring and used it for his own purposes. He murdered his best friend for the ring and became a wretched creature. Yet, both Bilbo and Frodo had compassion for him, and he started desiring association with the light. At times, he secretly followed Frodo and his fellowship on their quest, keeping close to the shadows. Later, when Frodo and Sam separated from the others, he took a more active part in leading them to Mount Doom. Gandalf often persuaded the Nine to leave him unharmed because he believed he had an important part to play in their quest. The creature they called Gollum was part of the interdependent web of life on Middle-earth, especially as they drew closer to Mordor, their destination. There's always a risk that he would turn on and attack them, but they had to trust his leadership in getting through certain parts of their journey to the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. The great wizard Gandalf was aware of the nature of the darkness that was spreading, and he had his own work to do while the fellowship kept to their journey. Poor Frodo was often left to his own devices, and He often bore most heavily the weight of the ring's burden, hanging from a chain around his neck. Luckily, he had Samwise, Merry, and Pippin as companions on the road to keep his spirits up and provide the hope he needed to keep going. One stop on the four hobbits' journey was to visit the elves at Rivendell, the idyllic house of Elrond. Elrond hosted a great feast and held a council among the wisest and most learned beings of Middle-earth. That council appointed a fellowship of 8 companions for Frodo on his journey, made up of several races of Middle-earth: hobbit, wizard, elf, dwarf, and human. 9 was the total number of the fellowship, and 9 was also the number of the torturous flying Nazgul who searched for Frodo the Ring-Bearer. Yet it was at Rivendell during a council that took place within the events described in The Hobbit, the prequel to The Lord of the Rings, when asked why he chose Bilbo for his role in the dwarves' mission, that Gandalf stated, "Some believe it is only great power that can hold evil in check, but that is not what I have found. It is the small, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay. Small acts of kindness and love." Why Bilbo Baggins? Perhaps because I am afraid and he gives me hope and courage. Gandalf, a big, powerful wizard, is saying this about Bilbo because he recognizes a big heart in a humble little hobbit. Yet Gandalf's words echo ancient wisdom. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu states that it is wise to think of the small as large and the few as many. Accomplish the great task through a series of small acts. He also wrote that when a master runs into difficulty, he gives himself to it. He doesn't cling to his own comfort. How many of us cling to our own comfort instead of making necessary changes that could improve the quality of our lives and the lives of those around us? Perhaps we are not really very comfortable, but the familiarity that keeps us where we are seems friendlier than risking change. As ordinary humans in our present age of this world, we sometimes find ourselves enamored of our own creature comforts and unable to generate the energy to make necessary changes in our lives, even when our happiness depends on it. We can be content to let others to do the hard work for us. Yet it is up to us to be the change we want to see in the world, such as using our voices to speak up for social and economic justice. In the words of Joseph Campbell, we must be willing to set aside the life we've planned in order to have the life that awaits us. We must be willing to set aside the life we've planned in order to have the life that awaits us. What adventures are we called to take? Is there a life outside your door that awaits you? To some, the greatest adventure they will ever take is to walk outside the door of their personal comfort zone into an unfamiliar world, one that is much more vivid and enchanting than the one they are living in. I wonder how far each of us would go to find out that we are not alone, that there are others around us with gifts to share, who would gladly put down the lives they've planned to find the life that awaits them as we search for the life that awaits us, and perhaps become part of our fellowship. I am often surprised to find myself surrounded by people who have important gifts they are willing to share with me. As I put more time into working with Reiki energy, I have learned that there are a host of kindred soul spirits around me who also work with that same energy. Like Frodo, I am not alone. I have many people who are there to support me in my work to bring joy to the lives of others through my arts and passion for walking labyrinths. Is there an adventure calling you to put down your life as you know it right now in order to walk into a new life? Is there something that you've always dreamed of doing? Is there a wizard in your life who is calling you to take the first step forward? In his book, The Re-Enchantment of Everyday Life, Dr. Thomas More declares that the soul needs a home that holds the spirit of enchantment. Does your home or your life need the spirit of enchantment breathed into it? That spirit may be found around the corner from where you are, or far from home. Perhaps there's a place such as Rivendell, with its abundant greenery and waterfalls, that you have always wanted to visit. For me, that place would be Ireland or Spain, two countries I'd love to return to. I'd also love to make a pilgrimage to the cathedral in Chartres, France, to walk the medieval labyrinth there. If we do choose to uproot ourselves, we are not guaranteed to return the same people we were when we left. Like the hobbits, we may find it difficult to leave the familiarity of our homes to accomplish a specific task, like attending a rally and speaking up for equality, even though we know it might help us and those around us in the long run. Who would you choose for your fellowship? If you did leave your present life behind in order to begin a new adventure, even if that were to begin a small business, a graduate degree program, or a pilgrimage, or to participate in resistance activities that promote peace between people from diverse cultures, would you choose a companion or a fellowship of companions to travel with? If so, what would your fellowship look like? What are their diverse gifts? I've been on lots of adventures in my lifetime. Most of them involved travel. I've lived in New York, California, and now Massachusetts. I traveled to San Francisco, Hawaii, Canada, New Mexico, Ireland, England, and across Europe as far east as Greece. I've enjoyed visiting and learning about those places and making new friends, most often fellow students and travelers. On the eve of my setting out on each journey, part of me wanted to hide in my own little hobbit hole and never leave my familiar world. But I did fly off, despite the flurry of beating butterfly wings in my stomach. In the end, I brought back with me memories of rich cultural experiences and a renewed sense of confidence that comes with meeting the challenges that often accompany traveling abroad. Those travels also made me who I am. So I never really returned home the same person who left. My world grew with each adventure. Now that I am on a quest to become a certified labyrinth walk facilitator, my fellowship includes trained facilitators and others who love to mix movement with their spiritual practice. Labyrinths are ancient paths for walking meditation, often used for forming community and initiating positive change in the world, one step at a time. My fellowship in planning and facilitating labyrinth walk events include artists of all types, teachers, ministers, therapists, and children. All those who walk labyrinths are fellow pilgrims and kindred souls, and we learn from each other. I also have a fellowship of healers. When I learned in May that I have 2 compressed discs, spinal discs in my neck that affect the nerves and muscles in my right shoulder and arm, my friend Jenny began giving me acupuncture treatments and has become one of my fellowship on my journey of healing. This fellowship also includes my chiropractor, my Reiki teacher, my fellow Reiki students, and my counselor therapist. Because they are there for me, I feel more courage to take risks and to make needed changes in my life. Though like Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, it is sometimes tough for me to take the first step forward on a new adventure. I am always happy that I have. My world keeps stretching when I do, and returning home is even sweeter because I've left to follow the call of my heart. When I am home, I have memories to keep my spirit alive. My invitation to all of you is to open new doors, gather a fellowship of support around you, and take small steps toward the life you are called to live. In the words of Bilbo Baggins, in a farewell poem, he recites for fellow hobbits Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin as they leave Rivendell for the last time, to return to the Shire at the end of The Lord of the Rings. The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road is gone, let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin, but I at last, with weary feet, will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to begin.